Hi everyone. Tonight we're heading into the cold, so cold your eyelashes could freeze together before you even blink. You're standing on the deck of a medieval pirate ship, the planks glazed with frost, the sea around you as dark as spilled ink. The wind slices through your coat like a blade, and you can't imagine how anyone could sleep here, let alone dream. Yet they did. And tonight you'll learn how. Before we settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the content. And while you're here, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights and let's step into the story. You walk across the frozen deck, each step releasing a sharp crunch. It's well past midnight, and the sea has gone unnervingly calm, the kind of silence that settles only when even the wind grows tired. The sails hang like pale, frozen sheets, creaking whenever the ship shifts. A lantern near the mast flickers weakly, its glow warped by the cold mist drifting up from the water. Your fingers are already stiff, your breath rising in white clouds against the dark sky. Somewhere below deck, a man coughs, deep, wet, exhausted. Someone else mutters a prayer to Saint Elmo, patron of sailors and lightning, though you can't tell if it's a thank you or a plea. The scent of salt and tar mixes with something sour, maybe damp wool or the remnants of a spoiled barrel. You glance at the rigging and picture men climbing it even in weather like this, their hands bare, their boots slipping as they fought to manage the frozen lines. They slept wherever they found space. Pirates didn't have the cozy cabins you see in films. Most slept wedged between barrels or on tangled coils of rope. And in winter, when the seas turned brutal, surviving the night became the only real comfort. Conditions so harsh that modern sailors would run below deck begging for heat. You rub your hands together, trying to restore feeling. The air tastes metallic, almost like old coins. On some nights the cold was so severe that metal buckles clung to skin. For all their bravado, pirates were at the mercy of nature. Ships of the 15th and 16th centuries offered no insulation. Decks leaked, hulls groaned, and the only barrier between a man and hypothermia was a thin blanket and the warmth of bodies packed tightly together. Historians still debate whether pirates avoided the far north intentionally or simply followed trade routes wherever they led. What's certain is that winter at sea was relentless. The North Sea could thicken into slush, the Baltic could freeze like glass. Ice built up on the rigging until it bent the masts. Men chipped at it with knives just to keep the sails from collapsing. You stop near the bow, leaning over the rail. The sea below looks almost solid, a shifting layer of blue-gray shards. Beyond the horizon lie ports locked in ice, fishermen stranded ashore, and the faint idea of warmth. The pirates aboard this ship didn't have that luxury. Here, the cold wasn't a condition, it was part of the crew. It's easy to forget that pirates weren't always from warm seas. The romantic Caribbean image came much later. In medieval Europe, especially between the 13th and 16th centuries, pirates roamed the North Atlantic, the English Channel, and the coasts of Scandinavia. They raided merchant ships from Hanseatic ports or stalked the frigid northern whaling routes. The age of Vikings had passed, but its echoes lingered in the icy breath of men still surviving by plunder and sail. And here's a small detail to keep your imagination awake. Some pirates rubbed whale oil on their hands before sleeping to trap whatever heat they could. Thick, greasy, and foul-smelling, it acted like a crude thermal barrier. When your bones ached from the cold, smell didn't matter. You can almost feel that slick layer now, mixed with salt and dirt, holding in the little warmth the body produced. You step closer to a narrow wooden hatch leading below deck. The light inside is faint, warm, and unsteady, flickering like a heartbeat. The air there will be different, warmer, but heavy and cramped. The men below will be gathered in clusters, bundled in whatever scraps they could stitch or steal. One might snore through gaps where teeth once were, another might dream of treasure he'd never live to spend. Sleep on a ship like this wasn't gentle. It was a compromise between exhaustion and fear. A low wind rises again, whining through the rigging. You pull your coat tighter, though it barely helps. You think about how pirates measured comfort, not by softness, but by survival. A night without frostbite was considered fortunate. A morning when the hull hadn't cracked against drifting ice felt miraculous. The sea didn't care about their crimes or their bravery. It simply existed, cold, endless, and indifferent, testing anyone who dared cross it. You look at the stars, blurred by thin clouds. The same constellations have watched centuries of sailors push through nights just like this. Orion's belt, the North Star, steady guides for men who had little else to depend on. The rhythmic creak of the mast becomes nearly hypnotic, a slow lullaby made of wood and wind. There's a certain beauty in it too. If you look past the misery, you can see frost along the rail glinting softly in the lantern light. The sea breathes in slow waves as if asleep itself. You think about the crew below, each one carrying a story. Some criminals, some fugitives, some simply desperate. Tonight, their enemy is the cold. Tomorrow, they may return to violence, but for now, survival is their only shared goal. You run your hand along the rail, feeling the thin ice flake beneath your touch. The rough, solid rail. Despite the danger, the ship feels alive, groaning like something under pressure. A rope snaps somewhere and someone mutters a curse, the sound quickly swallowed by the night. Historians often focus on battles, loot, and flags, but the real human story hides in nights like these. In how they slept with their boots on because taking them off meant risking death. In how a blanket might be stolen the moment you drifted off. In how they sometimes sang softly into the dark, their voices shaky but determined, just to remind themselves they were still there. The ship rolls gently beneath your feet. Deep in the hold, barrels shift and chains rattle. You can almost hear the ghosts of all who came before, sailors, raiders, wanderers, each one leaving a trace in the freezing air. Each one leaves behind a touch of warmth in the endless cold. And as you stand beneath the brittle sky, you realize this story isn't about treasure or fame. It's about survival, the oldest, most fragile kind. The kind that happens one freezing night at a time. When all you can do is cling to the creaking wood beneath you and hope the sea doesn't notice you tonight. The ship groans under your feet as you shift your weight, the boards bending just enough to remind you that this entire world of wood and rope floats on a vast, merciless sea. The air feels jing. You hear ropes straining and timbers answering with low, aching notes. Every creak colder now, a steady wind cutting through the riggeels alive, as if the ship itself is trying to speak. You move slowly, guiding yourself along the icy railing. Moonlight spills in thin silver streaks across the deck, catching the frost that glitters like powdered glass. Every breath rises in a pale cloud before fading into the dark. The sails are stiff and heavy with ice, their frozen edges shaped into strange ripples that look more like sculptures than cloth. You pause to listen. The ocean has gone quiet except for the faint hiss of small waves brushing against the hull. Somewhere nearby, a loose rope taps rhythmically against the mast. That sound alone could drive a man to despair after enough sleepless nights. You imagine the pirates trying to rest with that steady knocking mixed with the groaning planks and the sudden shriek of wind through the rigging. Sleep was a nightly struggle, not with steel, but with sound. The upper deck is empty. Most of the crew have already slipped below to escape the wind. You can almost picture their shadows moving in the cramped space that smells of salt, sweat, and mold. A lantern swings above the hatch, its golden light faint, casting slow-moving circles through the air. You reach out to steady it, but the metal burns your fingers with cold, forcing you to pull back. Every surface on this ship bites. Even the ropes, stiff with frozen salt, cut your palms if you grip too tightly. It's easy to understand why some men refuse to climb the rigging in winter. One wrong step on the ice could send them into the Black Sea, disappearing before anyone even realized. And here's a small fact that might surprise you. Medieval ships were never silent, not even in calm weather. The constant shifting of wood, the rhythm of waves, the wind humming through the ropes, all of it created a living noise that never stopped. It was the ocean's version of white noise, only sharper, harsher, and full of danger. Pirates grew so accustomed to it that many couldn't sleep on land afterward, unable to rest without that chorus of creaks and sighs. And then there is the smell. Every ship carried its own scent of survival. You can imagine it now, the thick odor of tar, the sourness of unwashed clothes, the faint hint of stale rum, and something darker beneath it all, like rot or damp wool. It was the smell of confinement and endurance, the scent of men who couldn't leave even if they wished to. You walk toward the bow, the wood beneath your boots slick and shining. The railing is coated in rime, each line of ice catching the light like crystal veins. Deep inside the hull, the sound of snoring rises and falls. It is strange, almost comforting, that anyone could sleep through this. But they did, they had to. A man who couldn't sleep at sea would lose his mind within weeks. Reality settles in quietly. Most of these pirates would never grow old. Disease, cold, hunger, and battle claimed them early. You likely wouldn't survive a week here, let alone the winter. The air alone could wear you down. Yet they found rest between storms, wrapped in thin blankets or curled in corners where the wind couldn't reach. One unusual fact that fascinates historians is that pirates often slept close to their weapons. Cutlasses, pistols, and daggers stayed within arm's reach, even in deep sleep. It wasn't paranoia, it was necessary. On a ship full of thieves and killers, the line between sleep and danger was thin. Some men even tied their weapons to their belts before lying down so no one could steal them. Imagine the clinking of metal as they shifted, the dull knock of a pistol sliding across the planks. You crouch and place a hand on the deck, feeling the faint vibration of waves beneath you. There's a rhythm to it, slow and deep, like the heartbeat of something ancient. The ship speaks through those shudders, telling you its age and burden. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the wind, the wood, and the quiet stir of life below deck. Historians still debate whether pirates preferred sleeping above or below deck during the coldest voyages. Some say the lower deck's warmth, from bodies and enclosed air, was worth the discomfort. Others argue that the space was so foul, damp, and airless that many chose to sleep under the open sky, risking frostbite for cleaner air. Both could be true. You can picture it. One man sweating below in thick wool, another shivering above, breathing freely. The lantern's glow flickers again. You lean against the mast and feel its steady pulse, the wood shifting with every roll of the ship. It feels alive, like an old creature breathing in its sleep. Nearby ropes tap together softly, a quiet beat in the night. The world has narrowed to the ship, the sea, and the cold. The horizon has vanished, the stars hidden by drifting clouds. You could almost forget there is land anywhere at all. Out here, the pirates were trapped between two infinities, the frozen sky above and the endless sea below. Their only true home was the fragile planks between them. You take one last slow look around. The deck is a map of frost and moonlight. Every line, every nail, every frozen puddle tells a story of human stubbornness. The men below sleep, if it can be called sleep, while their ship whispers and groans around them. And you, standing with your breath hanging in the air, can almost feel what they felt, the uneasy balance between fear and exhaustion, the quiet endurance of surviving one more night. You descend a short ladder toward the lower deck, where the air grows heavier and smells of tar, old wood, and bodies pressed too close for comfort. The sound of the sea fades to a muted hum, replaced by the soft sway of ropes and the low groan of the hull. Down here, you finally see them, the sleeping pirates. They rest not on feather beds or neat bunks like soldiers, but in narrow hammocks tied from side to side, creaking as the ship shifts beneath them. Your breath pauses. It feels as if you've stepped into another world. A moving cave that rises and falls with every wave. The lantern's dim glow washes the room in dull gold, swinging just enough to make shadows slide along the beams. The hammocks sway lightly, each one holding a figure wrapped in coarse cloth. They seem calm, but you understand the truth. The sea rarely allows real rest. A small detail recorded from early seafaring notes that hammocks were not introduced for comfort but for safety. Sailors learned the danger of sleeping directly on deck. One sudden roll of the ship could slam a man into a wall or send him crashing to the boards. Hammocks changed everything. Hanging by ropes, they moved with the ship, supporting the sleeper instead of fighting the motion. Pirates adopted the idea quickly. A man in a hammock could finally close his eyes without bruising his ribs. You step closer and brush a hand across the edge of one. The fabric is stiff from salt and cold, its threads rough beneath your fingers. You can almost sense how it felt on skin already worn raw by wind and sea. An unexpected detail from old accounts says some pirates lined their hammocks with stolen sailcloth or even bits of animal fur when they were fortunate. Anything that kept a bit of warmth inside mattered. The cloth smelled of smoke, sweat, and salt. An unpleasant mix, but one that meant survival. As you listen to the hammocks swaying, the sound becomes almost soothing. Each one creaks at its own pitch, blending into a strange, uneven lullaby. The noise feels heavy, like time itself moving back and forth. The ship sighs as though sharing the same tired rhythm. You notice a man turning slightly, muttering in his sleep. Another lets out a short snort, rolling over so his hammock spins lazily before settling again. From somewhere above, water drips through the deck seams, hitting a bucket with a steady plink. A thin draft snakes through the cracks, making the lantern flame tremble. You pull your coat tighter, though the cold air still clings to your skin like a breath you cannot escape. It's easy to imagine pirates as men hardened to every hardship, but exhaustion breaks even the strongest. Records from merchant crews of the same period show sailors working 18 hours or more in harsh weather, sleeping only in brief stretches. Pirates were no exception. Their safety depended on staying alert, so rest came in short pieces, 2 hours here, 3 hours there. No one slept deeply. Not when every creak might signal a leak or a blade being drawn. Historians still debate how pirates divided sleeping shifts during brutal winters. Some argue they followed a set rotation like naval crews, with half the men awake while the rest slept. Others believe pirate life was far less organized, that men simply collapsed wherever they were once exhaustion overtook them. The truth may still be hidden somewhere in the silence of the sea. You look around the cramped space. The hammocks hang so close that they brush against each other when the ship rolls. Without moving, you could reach out and touch 3 different men. In this tight space, privacy disappeared entirely. Every breath, every snore, every dream whispered in sleep became part of a shared life. You realize that even here, pirates formed a kind of family, bound more by survival than loyalty. Picture the air on the coldest nights, thick with moisture. Your breath fogging even indoors. The walls wet with condensation, the ropes damp under your hand. The smell of soaked wool and human closeness fills the lungs until you can almost taste the salt in it. Then a sudden creak splits the quiet. The ship shifts again, and a few men murmur in response. One opens an eye, then lets it close. These men have learned to sleep through anything. The sound of waves hitting the hull becomes background noise. The rocking motion that might make a newcomer sick now rocks them to sleep like children. A quiet habit appears in old accounts. Sailors, including pirates, often hummed softly to steady themselves before drifting off. A tune might pass from one hammock to the next, changing slightly with each voice. It was something between music and prayer, helping hold fear back during gathering storms. On some nights, the ship itself seemed to hum along, the wooden frame vibrating with their low voices. You close your eyes a moment and listen. The sway of the hammocks, the flicker of lantern light, the occasional drip of seawater, they blend into a rhythm that feels timeless. This was how they endured the cold. Not by fighting it, but by moving with it, accepting it as part of their strange floating world. There is a simple balance here. Each hammock, a fragile cocoon, holds a life suspended between danger and rest. Outside, the sea is dark and endless. But here in this narrow wooden belly, men drift half asleep, trusting the ropes above them and the ship beneath them to last until sunrise. You open your eyes again and watch the shadows shift. For a moment, you forget the cold, the danger, even the history. You see only motion and rest, life and sleep swaying together under the weight of the sea. You duck lower into the ship's belly, careful not to strike your head on the beams. The space tightens as you move forward, and the air grows heavier. It feels warmer, though not comfortably so. The heat is trapped here, mixed with the scent of salt, smoke, and human breath. Your boots stick slightly on the damp floorboards, slick with condensation dripping from above. The dim light barely reaches the corners. A single lantern hangs from a hook, its flames struggling against the draft that slips through the cracks. Its glow trembles over sleeping bodies and open barrels. Every object throws an unsteady shadow that seems to shift on its own. You hear faint snores, the rasp of cloth, and the occasional tap of metal when someone moves and a blade touches wood. The walls are lined with rough boards, patched where leaks once threatened. The hull groans with each wave, and a drop of freezing water lands on your neck. You shiver. This was where pirates truly lived, not on open decks beneath the moon, but in the dim, damp gloom below, surrounded by ropes, barrels, and exhausted men. Sailor journals from the late Middle Ages describe the lower deck as both shelter and trap. Above, the wind could kill with cold. Down here, the air might choke you first. Yet most preferred it. Even foul, stale air felt kinder than the brutal wind outside. Another truth about life below deck, every sound echoed. A cough at one end could be heard across the room. Conversations became whispers, and whispers often turned into secrets. Here, alliances were formed, grudges simmered, and quiet stories passed between breaths. The cold ruled the sea above, but down here warmth came only from people. You crouch beside a heap of worn-out blankets. The fabric is rough, stitched from mixed scraps, some wool, some linen, some so thin light passes through. A heavy, earthy smell rises from them. You picture 2 or 3 men sharing one, bundled together in exhausted silence. In the corner sits a small figure, likely a boy of no more than 15, knees hugged tight, leaning against a barrel. Pirates kept young workers on board for the toughest tasks, scrubbing decks, running messages, sealing leaks. Many never reached shore again. For them, the lower deck served as bedroom, classroom, and nightmare in one. You move toward the hull and place your hand on it. The wood feels alive, cold, damp, yet faintly pulsing with the motion of the waves. Every vibration moves through your palm as the ship rocks. It seems impossible to sleep through such constant movement, yet the men did it nightly. Rest, for them, was less about comfort and more about escape. Accounts from explorers of the same period mention that crews often divided the hold with rope or hanging cloth to create simple sleeping corners. These makeshift barriers offered the illusion of privacy, though no one was ever truly alone. A cough or murmur slipped through easily. Some sailors even carved small charms into the beams near their hammocks, hoping for protection at sea. One touching practice appears in a few scattered ship logs. In harsh weather, some pirates kept a small ember glowing inside a covered bowl of sand, guarding it like treasure. The dim glow through the night was seen as a fragile promise of warmth. They called it the ship's heart. If it died out, they believed misfortune would follow. Modern researchers still debate whether this custom was common or limited to a few crews. The evidence is incomplete, part folklore, part fact. But imagining it makes its meaning clear. In the black belly of a ship, one red ember could feel like life itself. You look around and imagine the conversations whispered here. Men boasting about successful raids. Sharing tales of storms that nearly swallowed them. Others remembering homes they would never return to. Their voices must have blended with the creaks and drips, forming a rhythm of their own. The air grows heavier as you stay longer. You begin noticing the layered sounds that fill the hold, the steady thump of waves on the hull, the faint wind slipping through cracks, the soft groans of sailors shifting in their hammocks. Together they form a slow, steady pulse. The ship breathes with them, its lungs full of salt and human hopes. You kneel beside one hammock and study the sleeping man. His beard is tangled, his face half buried in rough cloth, one arm hanging toward the floor. His fingers twitch as if still gripping a rope or blade. Even in rest, he cannot fully release his work. The sea rarely allows complete surrender. For a moment, you close your eyes and imagine sleeping here. The thick heat, the odors of mold and sweat, the wooden walls sighing with each swell. Yet within the discomfort there is a strange gentleness. The ship rocks you without asking, a hard-earned cradle. A forgotten sailor once scribbled that below deck, the ship holds her breath. You sense it now. The air is dense but calm, as though the vessel pauses while its crew sleeps. Above, the night howls with cold, yet in this dim shelter the men find a fragile peace before dawn stirs the waves again. You climb back toward the main deck, where thin morning light leaks through cracks in the planks. The cold air hits your face at once, sharp and biting. The ocean smell returns, clean and harsh, mixed with old salt and damp rope. The sky shines like steel, and you feel the first hint of snow in the wind. The crew begins to wake. One man stretches. Another coughs, his breath forming pale clouds. Their clothing draws your attention. Nothing matches. Layers of fabric are thrown together from anything they could steal, trade, or repair. The sight quietly reflects survival. Records from the 15th century say sailors wore wool closest to the skin, then linen, then heavy canvas or hide coats. Pirates followed the same habit, wrapping themselves in anything that trapped heat. Some even wore stolen skirts or priestly robes, torn and remade into cloaks. Appearance meant nothing. Warmth meant everything. You watch one pirate adjust a bright red scarf, its edges frayed but thick. He loops it twice around his neck and tucks it in, muttering about keeping the devil's fingers away from his throat. A curious superstition. Many sailors believed the cold carried spirits capable of creeping into a man's lungs as he slept. A scarf was both comfort and defense. The wind strengthens, snapping the stiff sails. You pull your coat close. Frost forms on the ropes around you, hardening every knot. The men rub their hands and stamp their feet, trying to bring back feeling. One laughs bitterly and says, "The sea steals heat faster than it steals gold." Old merchant accounts note that winter voyages tested endurance more than navigation. The sea iced over, sails froze, and men often died not from storms but from slow, creeping cold. Some crews packed extra blankets, but most simply layered whatever clothing they owned. When that failed, they stuffed garments with moss, straw, or scraps torn from old sails, anything to block the wind. A lesser-known practice among northern pirate crews involved rubbing seal fat on their faces and hands at nightfall. It worked like crude insulation, trapping warmth and keeping moisture from freezing on the skin. The odor must have been awful, thick and fishy, but those who used it swore it protected their fingers. You can almost smell it now, that mix of oil and salt carried on the wind. Here, the cold feels almost alive. It seeps into everything, the ship's timbers, the ropes, the men's bones. You see their movements slow, each gesture careful, as though saving every bit of strength. There is no fire on deck, only the faint warmth of bodies working side by side. Scholars still debate whether pirates in northern waters relied on extra furs taken during raids or simply depended on whatever stolen materials they could gather. Some say pirates relied on seized supplies for clothing, taking coats from captured sailors and merchants. Others argue their lives were too disorderly to keep any real stores of garments. The truth likely varied from ship to ship. What remains certain is that no one endured the cold unprepared more than once. You kneel to observe the deck planks. Frost has settled into the wood grain, turning parts of it pale. Your breath lifts and disappears instantly. You consider how the crew must have felt each morning, shaking out frozen hammocks, tugging on boots stiffened overnight. Some surely cursed the ocean. Others probably laughed, knowing complaining would not warm anything. It is easy to forget that most ships of this era had no insulation at all. Their thin boards were sealed only with pitch and tar, which cracked in severe cold. Every gust slipped through the seams. Every splash turned to ice within minutes. If a man's clothes got wet, he had to remove them and beat them against the mast until the ice broke. Otherwise, he risked freezing where he stood. You can almost sense the stiff fabric in your hands, rough and cold, edges biting into your skin as you try to soften it. The ship becomes a closet of frozen cloth, hanging stiff and fragile like the hide of some great creature. A seagull calls overhead, its cry sharp in the stillness. The pirates glance up. One jokes that the bird must be lost, that even gulls avoid such weather. Laughter rises briefly, a small warmth before silence returns. Humor is one of the few comforts they have. You take another slow look around. Each man is wrapped differently, one in patched wool, another in layered sailcloth, another in something that might once have been tapestry. Together they look less like a crew and more like figures draped in whatever scraps the world left behind. There is a strange beauty in it. The colors, though faded, catch the light, soft reds, browns, and grays. The wind tugs at the edges of their clothing. The scene feels almost like a painting, still and muted. Then a sudden crack breaks the calm, sharp like breaking glass. A rope has snapped above. The pirates look up. One mutters a curse. They move quickly, still heavy with sleep, but alert. The cold makes every task more difficult, every motion slower. You can see their breath twisting through the air as they work. Once the rope is secured, the ship settles back into rhythm. The sea taps against the hull. One man yawns and tightens his cloak, mumbling about the cold slipping into his dreams. You understand his meaning. Out here, the cold reaches your thoughts before it reaches your skin. As you watch them, you begin to see their layered clothes as more than protection. They are shields against both the weather and discouragement. Each piece of cloth, each patch sewn with tired hands, reflects a refusal to surrender to the sea's indifference. So they move through the morning, wrapped in mismatched layers, their breath drifting like faint ghosts in the pale light. Above them, the frozen sails crack softly as the wind shifts. The ship carries on, bearing its shivering legends across a harsh horizon. You follow the faint smell of smoke and ash toward the galley, the small area where the crew cooked, debated, and tried to stay warm. The passage narrows as you walk, your boots thudding lightly on the boards. The air grows heavier with the scent of burned fat and tar. Metal clinks somewhere nearby. You can almost taste the iron in the air. Inside the galley, the light is dim, shaped by a single oil lamp swinging from a chain. Its glow paints uneven amber across the walls. You notice the small blackened hearth built from stones and reinforced with iron. A few embers remain, glowing weakly, but no open flame burns. Pirates knew better. Early naval records show that fire on a wooden vessel terrified every crew. A spark could turn the ship into an inferno before anyone reached water. They often had to choose between freezing or choking on smoke. Most accepted the cold. You crouch near the hearth, watching the faint glow pulse. The air carries the smell of wet wood, salted meat, and days-old smoke. Pirates gather around it carefully. Some extend their hands close without touching the iron. Their fingers are cracked from the cold. Others hold tin cups of rum, sipping slowly, eyes fixed on the embers as if urging them to hold on. One small detail from ship logs stands out. To create heat without open flames, crews warmed stones or sand in iron pots, sealed the tops with cloth, and carried them below deck. These makeshift warmers lasted for hours, just enough to loosen stiff hands or melt ice on ropes. You can imagine the scent of singed cloth mixing with the sea air. The wind presses faintly above, seeping through every gap. The lamp flickers, making shadows stretch and sway. The men move quietly. One scrapes the last bits of food from a pan. Another wipes his blade on his sleeve and mutters about the cold settling deep in his bones. They speak of warmth as if it were a kind of treasure. Modern researchers still debate how crews managed heat during harsh winter voyages. Some argue they used small shielded braziers when the sea was calm. Others believe they relied on sealed whale oil lanterns, their weak heat multiplied by wool layers and bodies gathered close. Whatever the method, it was always a risk. One mistake could mean death by fire or frost. You sit with them in the dim room. The coals glow steadily, almost like a slow heartbeat. Every few seconds, a pirate leans forward to stir the ashes, drawing out more warmth. The room seems to soften slightly when the heat rises. For a moment, everyone eases, their shoulders drop, their eyes half close. Then someone chuckles quietly. He points to a dented copper kettle hanging from a hook. The handle is wrapped with rope, and a small carved fish hangs from it. It is a charm, a simple hope that the ship will avoid fire. The men smile and tap it before returning to their tasks. A sailor's life was full of such tokens. They carried bits of bone, shells, or carvings as small assurances against the uncertainty around them. From driftwood, each with its own story. These objects were not luxuries. They were faith made tangible. When the world outside was carved from ice and salt, even superstition carried weight. The ship tilts gently beneath your feet. A few drops of hot water hiss as they fall onto the cold floor. The pirates curse softly, moving to steady the pans. One jokes that the ship must be envious of the warmth. Laughter ripples briefly, sincere and small. It feels like a tiny victory, proof that human spirit can persist even when fire cannot. Outside, the wind rises. The sails strain, and the ropes hum under tension. The sound travels through the wood, a reminder that the cold always waits beyond these walls. The pirates glance upward instinctively. The sea is never far. A fascinating 14th century account describes sailors warming their quarters with heated cannonballs. They would take one from the galley fire, roll it across the deck in a bucket of sand, then place it in a metal box to radiate heat. The risk was high, but it granted a few hours of bearable cold. Whether pirates truly attempted this is uncertain, but the idea illustrates their lengths for survival. You imagine the glow, faint and red, flickering across exhausted faces. Light catches scars in beards and eyes dulled by fatigue. Men lean closer, chasing fleeting warmth. The air smells of smoke, sweat, and old rum. The ship's noise fades until only the slow crackle of coals remains. Maintaining a fire, however small, became sacred, a heartbeat of light against darkness. A sailor might stay awake long after the others slept, tending the fragile heat as if guarding life itself. You lean back, listening to the faint music of the sea against the hull. The wind continues above. The pirates stretch, shoulders glowing in the faint light, breath misting in the cold air. For a brief moment, the room feels human, almost safe. Then the lamp flickers, and the cold returns quietly, patiently. The warmth fades, leaving only ashes and salt. Yet, in this fleeting moment, with glowing embers and heavy eyes, the cold feels distant. Somewhere deep in the ship, a small coal continues to burn. You climb to the middeck, where light is thin and blue, signaling the beginning of day, though the sun has yet to pierce the mist. The air is brittle, fragile with each breath. Above, the rigging hums as sails strain and wood creaks in a slow rhythm. It is not chaos, but duty. The ship never sleeps, not even when the crew attempts it. Night watches structure life here. Pirates, like naval crews, divided time into shifts called watches. Some kept guard while others rested. Every few hours, the bell rang to signal the change. It was the only clock they truly trusted. You imagine the bell's dull tone, cutting through dreams like a whisper from the sea. Early privateers' records describe watch rotations as both discipline and curse. Too much rest meant danger, too little, madness. Pirates, who resisted strict order, often adjusted schedules for their moods. Some slept only 2 hours, others stayed awake until exhaustion claimed them. What mattered was the rhythm, the pulse of the ship, life that never stopped. You lean on the cold railing. The horizon glows faintly. A few men shuffle from below deck, eyes blurry, hair matted with frost. One yawns audibly, another splashes seawater on his face, gasping and laughing at the shock. Their voices are hoarse yet alive. The next watch begins. A 16th century sailor's diary notes that watchmen used music to stay awake, not songs, but low humming, rhythmic stamping, or tapping spoons on barrels, keeping time with the rocking ship. You can almost hear it, a murmuring percussion, the ship's heartbeat. The man at the wheel grips it tight, fingers red and cracked. The ship tilts as he adjusts course. Beside him, another scans the mist, watching for ice or enemy sails. Neither speaks. Silence is its own language here. Their movements are meditative, bodies learning the rhythm of the ocean. Sailors often describe the sea as both torment and teacher. The motion seeps into the bones. Even in sleep, bodies rock as if still at work. Men returning to land sometimes sway for days, still balancing on invisible waves. Not every watch is calm. Darkness can hide more than waves. One man frequently glances over his shoulder, expecting shadows to conceal threats. Sailors once feared creatures trailing ships, waiting for a man to fall overboard. The fear of isolation in the dark ocean could outweigh any battle. The rotation continues. Men from the previous shift stumble below deck, faces gray with fatigue. One rubs his chest, chasing the cold that never leaves. They will sleep if noise and cold allow, until the next bell. Experts debate how much rest pirates truly managed. Some estimate under 4 hours per day during long voyages. Others suggest brief naps between raids, a luxury no navy could afford. The truth lies between exhaustion and necessity. You approach the main mast where a lantern hangs. The flame flickers weakly, yet light spreads across the deck, illuminating frost on ropes and railings. Running your fingers along a rope, you feel stiff salt crust that crunches slightly beneath your touch. Everything here bears the mark of the sea, down to the smallest fiber. One of the pirates on watch begins to whistle softly, a slow, mournful tune rather than a song. The others glance at him but remain silent. The sound drifts across the ship, curling around the masts and fading into the distance. It fills the quiet without breaking it. In this rhythm, the ship feels alive. Each man is like a cell, each watch a heartbeat. When one falters, the rest must carry on. This understanding binds them more tightly than any code of loyalty. The ocean enforces unity through fear. Some crews had a curious tradition, passing a token during watch changes. It could be a carved bead, a button, or a scrap of rope, symbolizing the weight of responsibility. The incoming sailor would hold it briefly, whisper something only he knew, and tie it to his wrist. Dropping it was seen as bad luck. You picture rough hands exchanging that small object in freezing air, a simple act with deep meaning. The sky lightens slightly, a faint promise of day, while the sea remains dark, glinting where ice drifts float by. The pirates scan the horizon, eyes narrowed against the wind. Sleep clings to their faces, but alertness returns slowly. The bell rings again, a hollow sound swallowed by mist. Another rotation begins, another trade between rest and duty. The rhythm never stops, not for weather, exhaustion, or fear. The ship depends on it. You close your eyes, letting the bell echo through your chest. It no longer feels harsh. It feels like breathing, constant, steady, an anchor in the chaos. The pirates live and sleep by this rhythm, and in a strange way, so do. That evening, the cold deepens. The air feels heavy, and the sky bruises with purple clouds. Waves move sluggishly, and the ship slides like a tired animal. Lanterns swing lazily while pirates gather close, faces shadowed and pale. Tonight, only rum offers warmth. Its scent arrives first, sweet, sharp, earthy, a mix of molasses and smoke. A flask passes down the line in silence. The burn is brief, blurring the cold and softening the edges of the night. One man sighs in relief, finally feeling his heart again. Historical journals note that rum was both comfort and curse aboard ships. It numbed pain, quieted fear, and filled empty bellies when food was scarce, but it also dulled reflexes, frayed tempers, and sparked fights that could end in blood on the planks. Pirates had no regulated rations. A cask could last a week or a night, depending on mood. You sit nearby, listening to their talk. Laughter carries easily, low and rough. Stories blur truth and exaggeration, stitched together by the rhythm of cups. One speaks of a raid near the Canary Islands where drinking outweighed fighting. Another recalls frost forming on a man's beard so thick it broke when he smiled. Some crews mixed rum with seawater to stretch it and soften its impact in the cold, calling it grog, a practice later adopted by navies. The salt was harsh on thirst but gentler on frozen throats. You almost taste it, sharp and briny, like the ocean itself. Lantern light catches a bottle, turning the liquid amber. The pirates watch it as one might watch a fire. Rum becomes a substitute for warmth, both body and mind. The wind moans through the rigging. A pirate hums, cracked and low, joined by others in a slow, uncertain melody. It is no song of victory, but something older, belonging to the sea. The calm that follows too much drink and too little sleep settles in your chest. Experts debate whether alcohol truly helped sailors survive cold. Some argue it only created the illusion of warmth, drawing heat from the body once the buzz faded. Others say small doses offered genuine comfort, enough to keep despair at bay. Its effect on morale, however, is undeniable. One pirate wipes his mouth and grins through cracked lips, teeth yellow, cheeks hollow. He taps the bottle and says, "To the cold, may it drink slower than we do." The others laugh, brittle beneath the surface. The ship rolls gently, lantern light rippling across the deck. Some lean against barrels, eyes half closed. Rum distorts time, stretching minutes into hours, blending the sea's rhythm with intoxication until even the cold seems distant. But peace is fragile. A sharp, slurred shout breaks the quiet, two men arguing over a cup. One pushes the other, and the crew rushes to separate them, voices low to avoid waking the rest. The fight ends as abruptly as it began, leaving tense silence. Sailors held a superstition that spilling rum angered drowned spirits, who claimed the liquid once it touched the deck. After fights, some pirates would pour a few drops overboard, whispering into the dark water. Wind carries the smell of rum across the deck. Below, men stir in hammocks, muttering in sleep, perhaps dreaming of taverns, firelight, soft beds, warmth without end. The bottle returns to you. You lift it to your lips. Its taste is harsh, alive. It burns for a moment. Then the scene fades, leaving behind the subtle comfort of shared experience. The cold still presses against your face and seeps into your fingers, yet it feels gentler now, as though it has agreed to wait. Above, the sails snap once, and the ship tilts slightly. The rum in your stomach is like a small ember, insufficient to chase away the chill, but enough to remind you that you are present. Around you, the pirates laugh again, their voices slow and rough, and for a fleeting hour, the harshest night at sea feels almost human. By dawn, the rum has vanished, leaving the air heavy with the scent of salt, smoke, and spent laughter. The pirates fall silent, their voices fading to whispers as the cold returns. You watch them curl into their corners, pulling blankets close, eyelids heavy but restless. Sleep at sea is different. It is less a rest than a thin barrier between exhaustion and memory. Leaning against a wooden beam, you feel the ship moving beneath you, swaying gently, like it breathes around you. The men drift into uneasy slumber, faces softening, bodies curling inward. The sound of the sea merges with their slow, uneven breathing. Somewhere above, the ropes knock against the mast, producing a rhythm that feels almost deliberate, almost kind. Historical records show that pirates often dreamt of land. They spoke of beaches, fires, and soft beds as though they were miracles. Some claimed to see gold in their dreams, coins spilling from invisible chests, only to vanish when grasped. The frustration of that longing often became nightmarish. Interestingly, folklore suggests the colder the sea, the sweeter the dream. An old ballad notes that dreaming of fire during winter was seen as an omen of fever, storm, or battle. The men joked about it, but many believed it. When warmth is rare, even imagined fire can seem dangerous. You notice a man turn in his hammock, mumbling a word that resembles home, perhaps recalling the green place, with trees and smoke curling from chimneys. Others shift, grunting or sighing, tangled in their hammocks like fish caught in nets. The ship rocks, and the hammocks sway in response, creating an almost peaceful scene. From a historian's perspective, dreams were one of the few escapes available to sailors. Diaries from the 15th century describe recurring visions among crews who spent long periods at sea, soundless lands, solid ground, birds instead of waves. For pirates living amidst constant danger and movement, these dreams may have felt like paradise. You close your eyes, trying to imagine their inner world. The scent of the ocean permeates even dreams. The motion of the ship never fully disappears. Even asleep, the sea remains. You might walk through a market while the ground tilts beneath you. You might see a familiar face that dissolves into the shape of a wave. The mind, it seems, never lets go of the ocean once it takes hold. Modern experts debate whether prolonged isolation caused shared hallucinations among sailors. Some argue monotony and malnutrition warped perception, while others believe the endless rhythm of waves induced a hypnotic state between waking and dreaming. Regardless, the sea invaded their sleep. Around you the pirates shift. One laughs softly in a dream, another curses. Someone snores loudly, prompting a few quiet chuckles before silence returns. Their body heat creates a faint mist in the cold air. Lantern light flickers across the ceiling, casting waves of gold that rise and fall with the ship's movement. Many pirates were once ordinary sailors, merchants, or fishermen familiar with land. Their dreams may have been fragments of that past life. A house by the harbor, a woman's voice, the smell of bread. For all their roughness, pirates remained human, and the night reminded them of it. One prisoner's account describes a pirate who refused to sleep below deck to avoid dreaming of land. Instead, he slept on the open deck, wrapped in sailcloth, facing the stars. Mocked as a ghost lover, he said it reminded him he was free. Weeks later, he vanished at sea. You listen to the sea outside, whispering against the hull with a distant, almost tender voice. Perhaps this explains why pirates both loved and feared it. The sea took their freedom and peace while offering riches and death in the same breath. In dreams, they may have tried to reconcile with it, taming it for fleeting hours. Logs also note that some crews encouraged storytelling before sleep to guide dreams. Stories, often about gold or food, helped men sleep, giving them visions worth surviving for. You sense the rhythm in the room now, murmured breathing, creaking hammocks, sighing sea. It feels ancient, almost sacred. The dreams aboard this ship are not peaceful, but they are alive, carrying warmth no fire can provide, the memory of something human beneath the cold. Lantern light dances across the beams, and for a brief moment, you imagine the ship itself dreaming. Its creaks are whispers, its sway a heartbeat. Perhaps even the wood remembers the warmth of long-gone sun. Surrounded by sleeping men and their fragile dreams, the cold outside feels less harsh. The next day begins under dull gray skies, clouds hiding the horizon. The cold bites even before your eyes open fully. The ship groans underfoot, timbers stiff with frost. The scent of salted meat lingers. Nearby, a pan clatters, morning meal begins, though calling it that feels generous. In the galley, a few men gather around a small table, heads bowed, hands cupping tin plates. The food is as tired as they are, hardtack biscuits chipped like stone, strips of salted beef glistening with oil, and a pot of gray stew faintly smelling of brine and smoke. The air is damp and heavy, carrying the sharp scent of boiled fat and wet wool. Old maritime records show that pirates, like other sailors of the era, survived on rations designed to last months. Meat was packed in salt barrels, often so hard that it had to be soaked overnight before cooking. Bread hardened within weeks, and breaking a tooth on a biscuit was common. Known as ship's bread, it was closer to a punishment than nourishment. You watch a man struggle to chew a piece of beef, his jaw moving slowly. He grunts, swallows, then forces a humorless laugh. "Better than snow," he mutters. Another scoops thin, pale stew into a tin cup. From where you stand, the salt smell is almost overwhelming. A small but revealing detail from pirate life shows some softened their hard biscuits with rum. They soaked the bread until it crumbled, then mixed it with sugar or molasses when available. The result was a sweet, thick porridge, a rare comfort in the bitter cold. You can almost taste it now, sweet and bitter, spreading a warmth that hints at comfort. The cook stirs the pot with a wooden ladle, his hands reddened by cold. He hums softly, an old song from a distant port. The melody floats through the galley, mingling with the clink of spoons and the creak of the ship. The pirates eat in quiet, exhaustion-filled silence. There are no fresh vegetables or fruit, no pliable bread. Their lips are cracked, faces pale. Some show early signs of scurvy, bleeding gums, sluggish movements, dull eyes. The sea spares none. Chewing and swallowing feel more like survival than pleasure. Historical records note inventive cooks trying to lift spirits with odd recipes, crushed biscuits with seawater and grease to form dumplings, powdered mustard to mask rot. Creativity born of desperation. Pirates were stubborn. Anything edible became a meal. A man next to you holds out a plate of stew, gesturing to sit. You take it, feeling the warmth seep into your fingers through the metal. The broth is thin, smoky, salty, but alive. It slides down your throat, warming a part of you long chilled. Around you, spoons scrape plates. Voices rise in an argument over the last piece of dried fruit. Hunger sharpens tempers more than rum ever could. The cook slams his ladle against the pot. The noise halts the quarrel. Silence falls, brief but heavy, before the rhythm of eating resumes, slower and quieter. A curious note from a 14th century travel account mentions sailors carrying small cloth bags of herbs or citrus peel to mask the smell of spoiled food. You picture a pirate holding one to his nose, pretending the stew tastes like roasted lamb. Ridiculous, yet profoundly human. Smoke thickens as the last coals fade. Someone coughs. Another belches, then laughs, the sound sparking through the room, a reminder that they are alive and together. Outside, wind rattles the ship's sides. Men finish quickly, wiping mouths on sleeves or rags, saving crumbs in pouches or licking fingers clean. The cook scrubs his pot with sand and seawater, humming the same tune. Historians still debate how pirates maintain morale on such meager diets. Some argue shared meals built unity, a ritual reinforcing that they were not alone. Others believe the monotony undermined discipline, feeding mutiny alongside hunger. Both may be true. The galley was the ship's heart, both refuge and battlefield. You linger as the table empties, plates stacked. The scent of salted beef lingers. Faces are hardened by necessity, eyes dulled by cold, yet alert. The sea strips softness, but cannot extinguish the will to live. The cook pours the last of warm water into a small cup, offering it with a trembling hand. "For luck," he says. You accept it, the warmth seeps into your palms. The taste is plain, salt and metal, but sacred in this frozen place. Every bit of heat is a blessing, every meal, however meager, a quiet defiance. The cold sharpens daily, creeping into every seam. The ocean darkens to black glass. Wind cuts with a high whine. Snow drifts down, settling briefly on the deck before melting. Pirates move slowly, conserving energy. Boots crunch on frozen planks, sails stiff with frost, ropes glitter faintly. Beauty masks danger. Ice adds weight, and weight can break a ship. Historical accounts tell of sailors climbing frozen rigging with knives in their teeth, hacking ice to protect masts. You imagine a man halfway up the main mast, fingers bleeding as he chips frost, wind shrieking through ropes, sea below like solid glass. A merchant's log notes that during harsh winters, sailors used iron mallets to smash ice from sails, singing to distract from numb fingers. Laughter froze in the air, brittle and bright, carried off by wind. On this ship, pirates face the same trial. They move in grim rhythm, breaking ice from ropes, scraping frozen planks with wooden mallets. One leans close to the mast, breathing hard, determined to endure. His beard stiffens with frost. He brushes it away, but the crystals return almost immediately. Sea spray bursts into the air, freezing mid-flight, coating everything in a delicate white layer. Scholars have long debated whether pirates ever dared sail this far north. Some argue only desperate or lost crews would risk such waters, while others believe the lure of trade routes and unprotected cargo drew them to the edges of the known world. Whatever the reason, their bravery, or recklessness, led them into regions where even the sea seemed hostile. You grip the railing, eyes fixed on the horizon. The ocean stretches flat and endless, a gray mirror. Ice drifts by like shards of broken glass, gently striking the hull with a hollow ringing that echoes through the deck. In the distance, a deep cracking sound arises, long and mournful, like the earth itself sighing. The ice is moving. The pirates hear it too. Their gaze sharpens. They understand the danger. If the ship becomes trapped, the pressure could crush it within minutes. No storm, battle, or fire compares to this slow, invisible threat. The tension is palpable, a collective breath held too long. An old sea chronicle recounts sailors learning to listen to the ice. A high whistling note at night signaled the ice approaching, a warning and a haunting beauty. Men called it the sea singing in its sleep. You strain your ears, momentarily catching a faint melodic hum beneath the wind. The pirates continue their tasks. One climbs the rigging with a small axe, another drags a barrel to block a leak. Faces flushed from the cold, eyes watering, they work silently. The sounds of wood cracking and tools striking fill the air, harsh but essential. Your breath fogs, frost forming on your lashes, blurring the world into light and shadow. You glimpse the helmsman, hands gripping the wheel, gloves stiff, knuckles white. Every movement is deliberate. One misstep could send the ship into an ice trap. Lanterns burn low, their glow muted by frost. The deck glimmers faintly, a frozen mosaic of salt and snow. A whisper of prayer reaches your ears, words indistinct, ancient. Records from a 15th-century Danish voyage describe crews using oil-soaked rags to keep ropes flexible during freezes. Pirates may have adapted the same, rubbing lines with grease stolen from merchants or whalers. It must have smelled foul, yet it kept the ship alive. Even now, a man kneels near the bow, working a thick black paste into the ropes. His hands tremble, but he continues. The sky darkens swiftly, clouds sink to the horizon. Snow falls again, heavier now, thick flakes swirling in the wind. The world fades into white, sea and sky merging, erasing all sense of direction. The pirates pause, uneasy, staring into the blankness. One laughs softly, breaking the tension, the sea's gone blind. Silence follows, heavier than the cold. You stand, snow settling on your shoulders, the air pressing close yet strangely peaceful. The ocean sound is replaced by the faint crackle of forming ice. One by one, the pirates retreat below deck, leaving you with the whispering snow. For a moment, you feel small, fragile, fully at the mercy of the frozen world. The ship groans beneath you, pushing forward through a glassy sea. Somewhere ahead, the horizon waits, hidden under mist and ice. You realize why sailors feared these northern waters more than any cannon. By nightfall, the ship is eerily quiet. The wind softens, but the cold bites sharper, cutting through fabric and bone. The sea lies unnervingly calm. Waves small and slow, as if frozen mid-motion. You walk carefully on the deck, hearing only the timbers creak and a faint rattle of a loose chain. Below, the stillness is heavier. Lanterns flicker, their flames thin and trembling. The air is sour, a mix of sickness, damp wood, and salt. A man coughs in the shadows, another groans in his hammock. The rest attempt sleep, eyes half open, weary. Maritime journals note that disease was the sea's true predator. Cold worsened frostbite, scurvy, and fever, spreading through crowded quarters faster than any cannon. Kneeling beside a sick sailor, you see cracked lips, pale skin slick with sweat, fingers twitching as if gripping a vanished rope. His prayers are almost inaudible. Historical records mention sailors rubbing vinegar on hands and faces to ward off illness. A sour illusion of control, often futile in the stench of decay. Deeper in the shadows, a half-full bucket of murky water shows evidence of recent vomiting. A rat scurries by, sleek and alert, ignored by the crew. Rats were constant companions, pests and protectors alike, alerting men to rot and consuming what they could not. Historians note pirates suffered the same plagues as the fleets they hunted. Lack of fresh food caused scurvy, damp clothing invited frostbite, minor wounds became deadly infections. Yet, despite the misery, open complaints were rare. Weakness at sea risked mutiny or abandonment. The sick were tended only as long as they remained useful. You glance toward the corner where a man sits awake, sharpening a knife with slow, deliberate strokes. His eyes stare off into the distance, focused on nothing. Perhaps he sharpens it for comfort, perhaps out of fear. The scraping of metal against stone fills the silence like a heartbeat. He pauses only to take a sip from a flask, then resumes. Beside him, a sick man watches, seemingly hypnotized. Whispers ripple through the crew that the fever has already claimed 3 men. One was thrown overboard, wrapped in a canvas shroud, his body frozen before sinking. The others lie below, too weak to move. The living step carefully around them, pretending not to notice. In this cold, grief has little energy to burn. Historians still debate whether pirates had any form of quarantine. Some argue they isolated the ill near the hold. Others suggest a rough form of care, like sharing blankets or helping comrades to the latrine. Likely, it depended on the crew and how close death already stood. A shiver runs through the deck as a wave bumps the hull. The lantern swings, casting fleeting shadows over the sleeping men. Their faces shift between calm and pain. One mutters for water, another calls for a mother long dead. Darkness here carries more than night. It holds every fear that grows when warmth runs out. A 15th-century sailor's journal describes the same hush, calling it the silence before the sea claims its due. The writer said the crew stopped singing, arguing, even laughing. The only sound was careful breathing, as if noise might invite disaster. That same silence presses on your ears now, almost physically. The ship sways again, and somewhere above, a gull cries, a lonely, distant sound fading quickly, leaving only the creak of the hull. You think about how fragile this floating world is. A few inches of would separate life from the freezing water. The men below cling to it as if their faith alone prevents it from splintering. You inhale deeply, tasting stale air. The cold bites into your lungs, sharp and clean, a reminder of how thin the line is between breathing and choking. You glance at the sick men, their faces slick with fever. One has gone completely silent. A companion checks him by feeling his neck, then covers his face with a rag. No one speaks. Life goes on. Above deck, the ship rolls forward, indifferent to loss. The cold does not pity, and the sea does not pause. Yet, in the dim light and heavy air, the pulse of humanity persists. Each cough, breath, and small act of care keeps the darkness from consuming everything. Morning comes with a pale sky and uneasy silence. The ship drifts through gray waters, slow and heavy. You walk carefully on the frost-crusted deck, the cold biting even through gloves. Most pirates are awake, moving stiffly and speaking quietly. Below, the sickness lingers, but life continues above. A soft sound reaches you, a faint, delicate meow. A small, wiry cat moves along the railing, mottled gray fur and a lazily flicking tail. Its presence seems odd among worn boots and frozen ropes, yet it moves with calm confidence. One pirate kneels, offering it a scrap of dried fish. The cat sniffs, accepts it, and purrs faintly. Cats were valued aboard ships long before pirates popularized them. Medieval maritime records mention them as essential crew members, protecting food and ropes from rats. They kept vermin away and lifted spirits in the harshest conditions. You watch the cat weave between legs, brushing against boots. A frost-bearded pirate lets it climb onto his shoulder. Others grin as the moment softens their hardened faces. The cat curls there contentedly, tail wrapped around the pirate's neck like a scarf, a small comfort in a vast, cold world. A 16th-century sailor's letter claims ship cats were believed to control the wind. A sneeze signaled a storm, washing behind the ears promised a rising breeze. Sailors respected them deeply, knowing harming a cat could bring misfortune. You see superstition etched into the men's demeanor, half belief, half precaution. The cat leaps down, prowls to a coil of rope, then curls into a perfect circle, purring. Even such a small sound makes the ship feel less empty. Cats were not the only comforts aboard. Between ropes and barrels of salted food, small signs of humanity appear. A stitched cloth, a crude wooden carving of a woman's face, a seashell tied to a nail. Each object is a reminder of land, warmth, and things worth returning to. A pirate near the mast sharpens his knife slowly, a colored glass charm hanging from his neck. It catches the weak sunlight, scattering it across his hands. He notices your gaze and shrugs. "Keeps the cold away," he says with a half smile. The charm may not hold heat, but it holds faith, and that is enough. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of salt and tar. Men work quietly, patching sails, scraping frost from planks. The cat follows, observing, pausing now and then for a scratch, purring in appreciation. Its sound feels like laughter in a place where laughter has grown rare. Chroniclers note sailors watched animals for signs of danger. Flattened ears or a hiss could warn of unseen trouble. The cat moves purposefully now, eyes bright, reading messages in the wind no man can hear. A younger pirate kneels beside it, whispering gently, scratching behind its ears before offering a small piece of dried meat from his pocket. For a moment he smiles like a boy, his shoulders easing. The cold, sickness, and endless gray sea all recede in that brief exchange. Even modern historians acknowledge that companionship was vital for surviving long voyages. Without human warmth or comfort, men could lose their minds as quickly as their fingers to frostbite. Shared jokes, small rituals, and animals like this cat became lifelines for sanity. They reminded the crew that life was still worth protecting, even in misery. Around you, other signs of care appear. Someone has repaired a torn blanket with surprising precision using thread dyed red. Another has carved initials into the mast, perhaps his own, or someone he left behind. These small gestures of kindness seem fragile, yet persistent. They refuse to disappear, no matter how harsh the sea becomes. The cat stretches and yawns, climbing to a beam where it can observe the men below. Its tail sways lazily as it settles in a weak patch of sunlight. The pirates glance at it from time to time, as if its calm is contagious. Even the sick below deck may rest more easily knowing it is there, alive and watchful. You take a final look at the small creature before turning toward the horizon. The wind has grown colder, carrying a fine mist across the deck. The cat lifts its head briefly, then curls back to sleep, undisturbed. There is something reassuring in that. If a creature so small can find peace here, perhaps the men can too, even for a brief moment. The sky lightens slightly, a pale silver. The ship moves forward steadily, despite the ice and wind. Below deck, the coughing subsides for now. Above, the cat dreams in the sunlight, and the pirates work quietly, held together by fatigue, superstition, and the faint warmth of their small comforts. You push open the captain's quarters, expecting warmth or grandeur. Instead, a pocket of cold air greets you, smelling of damp wood and lamp oil. The cabin is narrow, more a box than a room, with a single lantern hanging from a beam that groans as the ship moves. Its light falls on a desk cluttered with maps, scraps of parchment, and a cracked compass. The captain sits hunched over the desk, his coat heavy, shoulders rounded like a man bearing more than frost. His hands, rough and scarred, rest beside an open book. You cannot see what he writes, but the steady scratch of a quill is oddly comforting. Captains of the age of sail often seemed privileged, yet their cabins offered little more than privacy. Historical logs describe such rooms as cramped, drafty, and full of groaning timbers. The captain slept alone, but he was never free from the sea's reach. Cold seeped through every crack, and the noise never stopped. You step closer. The light reveals his face, older than his years, eyes sunken beneath dark circles. A faint line of frost glints in his beard from frozen breath. He glances up, nods once, and returns to his writing. His expression is not unkind, just weary, bone-weary, the kind only those who lead men through storms know. On the table beside him, a half-empty bottle and a single pewter cup give off a faint rum scent. Nearby, a polished but worn pistol and a folded handkerchief embroidered with faded initials hint at someone left behind. Captured pirate journals note that captains often wrote at night to calm themselves. Ledgers of loot, dreams, regrets, prayers, or letters they would never send. It was their only honest voice amid men devoted to bravado. The bed is a wooden frame with a straw-stuffed mattress. The blanket is thick but worn, patched from mismatched fabric. A nearby lantern glows too weakly to warm the air. The pillow is damp with condensation. Luxury is absent. The captain sleeps no better than his crew. He sighs quietly, setting the quill aside, fingers trembling from the cold. Then, remembering something, he opens a small box beside the desk. Inside are coins, bits of metal, and a locket. He opens it to reveal a miniature painting of a serene woman. He gazes at it before closing the lid. Sailors' accounts suggest captains kept such tokens not only for sentiment, but for sanity. Leadership at sea was extreme isolation. Every choice could mean life or death, and mistakes left scars that never healed. Locket, drink, and diary, all were shields against guilt. The ship groans as the hull scrapes ice. The lantern swings, casting light across the walls. Carvings etched into the wood mark survived storms or ports visited. One stands out, a deep cross, newer than the rest, perhaps a memorial, perhaps a plea. The captain glances at it, then looks away. A gust rattles the small window. He stands, adjusts his coat, and peers outside. His reflection looks ghostly, trapped behind frost. Snowflakes cling to the window pane. He breathes out, fogging the glass, then wipes it with his sleeve, a nearly tender gesture. Historians still debate how captains balanced authority and humanity. Some ruled harshly to maintain order, others with compassion to endure close quarters. The truth varied from man to man, storm to storm. This captain seems quiet and steady, yet the silence carries weight. He moves to the bed, rubbing his temples. The pistol remains within reach, gleaming faintly. He likely sleeps lightly if at all. Every creak may wake him, each sound reminding him of mutiny or those lost to raids. Chronicles note a captain's sleep was a coin tossed by the sea. Calm nights allowed rest, turbulent ones kept him awake, listening to the water whisper around the hull, counting each sound that could signal danger. Now you imagine that, the steady pulse of the sea outside, and the quiet pressure of guilt inside. He finally stretches out on the bed, pulling the blanket around himself. The lantern's glow softens, shrinking the room slightly. His breathing slows, though his eyes remain open a moment longer. Outside, the wind hums low, pressing against the glass. You linger in the doorway, observing him settle. There is no grandeur here, no romantic notion of piracy, only a man weighed down by silence. He closes his eyes at last, and the lantern flickers once before steadying. The ship creaks like an old lullaby. Amid the chaos above deck, this small cabin holds a fragile calm. The captain sleeps alone, but not peacefully. The cold keeps watch alongside him, whispering through the cracks, reminding him of all he has gained and lost. Night descends again, thick and silent. Lanterns on deck burn low, their light rippling across the wet wood like trembling stars. You move slowly through the corridor toward the crew quarters. The air feels heavier now, charged with unspoken tension. Down here, sleep does not come easily. Cold has crept into their tempers. Men lie in their hammocks, faces half hidden in dim light. Some whisper sharply to one another, others stare upward at the beams, eyes wide open. The ship groans softly, a sound that might be mistaken for breathing. Somewhere, a bottle rolls and clinks. Someone curses under their breath. From countless old ship logs, we know tension thrived on long voyages. Hunger, frost, exhaustion, and fear built slowly until they exploded. Pirates were no exception. They lacked naval discipline but knew anger intimately. When warmth and food ran low, words became weapons. You move closer to a cluster of hammocks where 3 men converse in hushed tones. Their voices are thick with drink and resentment. He keeps the best rations for himself. One says, "The captain eats soft bread while we chew salt." Another murmurs about the sick being thrown overboard too soon. Their words drift through the air like smoke, quiet but poisonous. A small detail in an intercepted pirate letter notes that captains often slept with weapons nearby, not for battlesy plotting. A sudden thud echoes from the at sea, but to guard against mutiny in the dark. Men driven by cold and hunger could forget loyalty in an instant. You look at these faces, wondering who remains loyal and who is already far corner as a man drops from his hammock. He sways slightly before standing, eyes glinting in the half-light. "Keep your mouth shut," he growls. No one answers. The tension thickens, settling on your skin like frost. Modern scholars still debate what truly fueled mutinies, greed for loot or despair. But here, in the biting cold of endless nights, despair feels far more dangerous. Greed requires planning. Misery needs only silence. The standing pirate moves away, footsteps heavy on the boards. The others watch him leave, saying nothing. One whispers, "Hell snaps soon." A short laugh follows, carrying no humor. They fear each other now. Sleep has become a risk. The lantern flickers, shadows lurch across the walls. The ship sways gently, but the mood remains brittle. Even the cat, curled in a corner, keeps watch, ears twitching at every sound. Men pull blankets tighter, turning backs to one another. A 15th-century trial record recounts a mutiny that began over a blanket. One man took another's during a freezing night. By morning, the deck was stained with blood. The court called it madness born of cold. Reading this, you understand how easily these nights could end the same way. A pirate near the door rests his hand lightly on a knife hilt, eyes closing cautiously. Others shift uneasily, pretending not to notice. Trust has frozen, like the sea outside. Sweat and smoke thicken the air. Someone mutters a prayer in a foreign tongue. Another spits in the corner. The quiet hum of the ship feels deafening, every creak and accusation echoes. You realize how fragile this calm really is. A monk who sailed with privateers once wrote that the sea is the greatest judge, listening before punishing. After surviving a night when his crew turned on one another midwinter, he claimed survivors heard laughter in the waves. True or not, the story clings to the air like salt mist. You breathe slowly. The lantern sputters. Above, the wind rises, rattling the rigging, momentarily breaking the tension. Cold returns, seeping through the wood. Perhaps that reminds them the real enemy lies outside for now. A voice from the corner speaks, calm but firm. Sleep while you can. Morning will judge what we say tonight. Silence follows. No one argues. The ship creaks once more, like an old sigh. Gradually, whispers fade. One by one, the men drift toward uneasy rest. The knife stays close, mistrust closer. Above, the sea groans under a sky too heavy for stars. Shadows breathe, and peace lasts only as long as the cold allows. Morning arrives with dim bluish light seeping through every crack. Frost clings to ropes, glittering faintly, but the air feels still. You step onto the deck, breath clouding in front of you. The sea is calm again, a pale mirror stretching to the horizon. Pirates move like ghosts, silent and slow, faces drawn tight with fatigue. Cold has settled deep in their bones, yet they fight it in their own ways. You notice pairs or small groups, working closely together, sharing what little warmth they have. A man tightens the rigging while another stands shoulder to shoulder with him. Movements are synchronized, unspoken. A rhythm in their silence, a small defiance against the cold. Records from a 14th century northern trade ship note that sailors often slept in clusters during the coldest nights, pressing close under shared blankets, not for sentiment but survival. The human body produces more heat than any lantern or brazier. The pirates aboard have discovered the same truth. Two men lean against the mast, wrapped in a tattered cloak, eyes closed, breathing slow, bodies swaying with the ship. Another small group sits on deck, passing a flask back and forth, sharing warmth in quiet solidarity. Their shoulders brush together. The cold remains sharp and relentless, yet they have found a way to soften it through closeness. A 15th century sailor's diary notes a practice called backsleeping, where two men lay back to back, sharing warmth through the night. It was practical, not intimate. Still, in such conditions, every small gesture carried meaning. You can picture it: weathered faces, tired eyes, silent gratitude in the shared heat. The ship rolls slightly, and one man laughs quietly, the first sound of joy in hours. He steadies his companion, and for a fleeting moment, the air feels lighter. Even in the coldest corners, companionship endures. Historians debate how much cooperation existed among pirate crews compared to naval fleets. Some argue that the absence of strict hierarchy forced deeper reliance on one another. Others suggest constant tension made true friendship rare. Observing them, you see both perspectives hold truth. The sea teaches teamwork but never forgets danger. At the bow, a young pirate sits cross-legged beside a small wooden box. He opens it, revealing a handful of faintly glowing coals. The heat barely reaches him, yet he smiles as though warmed by a roaring fire. Two others kneel nearby, hands close to the embers. Their breath clouds the air, their faces lit by the soft red glow. One hums an old tune. You recall reading that some crews passed ember boxes between shifts, fragile gifts of warmth. If the fire died, it was said to bring misfortune, as if the ship itself had lost its heartbeat. Their reverent handling of the box reflects this belief. The wind picks up, bringing the cold again. Some stamp their feet, others pull scarves tighter. Still, they remain together. One drapes an arm over another's shoulders. A third adjusts a blanket to cover both. These small gestures ripple across the deck like silent prayers. The cat appears, leaping from a barrel and weaving between legs, purring and brushing against boots. Someone scoops it up, tucking it under a coat. The animal wriggles briefly, then settles, another form of shared warmth, heartbeat against heartbeat. A 16th-century chronicler notes how sailors learned to move in rhythm with the rocking ship, leaning together to conserve energy and stay warm. You witness this rhythm now, a quiet, unconscious dance of man and sea. The captain appears briefly, pale in the morning light, surveying his huddled crew. Perhaps he recognizes the scene, remembering when he too slept shoulder to shoulder before command set him apart. He nods almost imperceptibly, then retreats to his cabin. The men return to work, hauling lines, scraping frost, adjusting sails. Movements remain slow but purposeful. Each shared breath and touch keeps the cold at bay. It is not the fire alone but the network of stubborn warmth passing from body to body that sustains them. You stand at the deck's edge, watching your breath vanish into the thin air. The horizon softens, the sky faintly pink as if the sun struggles to assert its strength. The pirates continue, close and silent, human. As the wind rises, the ship groans beneath their feet. Together, they endure another morning. Warmth is fleeting here, but for now, it suffices. Shared heat, quiet laughter, and the steady rhythm of work remind you that survival in harsh conditions is rarely solitary. Night deepens, and the sea becomes a vast black mirror. The ship drifts silently, heavy with frost. The slow groan of wood and hiss of water echo. The cold presses near, yet stillness dominates. Whispered words barely escape the hammocks, every sound amplified. A chain rattle, the sigh of wind, a cough lingering too long. One man mutters about the stars, too bright tonight, like watching eyes. Others hush him. Such talk is unwelcome when the sea listens closely. Maritime folklore reveals how sailors filled darkness with stories to keep fear in check. Superstition was their armor, night always layered with omens. Ghost ships without crews, mermaids singing sailors overboard, shadows walking the deck before dawn. These tales persist in rough, rum-roughened voices. Medieval journals note pirates avoided whistling after sunset, fearing storms, and never pointed at the moon, wary of bad luck. You watch a man glance up but quickly lower his gaze. Fear here is quiet, deep, habitual. The cat lifts its head, eyes glowing faintly. Men nod to it as a silent guardian. Despite their roughness, they cling to signs of protection, a small faith against an uncaring world. The ship creaks again, and someone whispers a prayer, not to God, but to the sea. "Be kind tonight," he murmurs. No one mocks him. Historians often describe pirate violence but overlook their fear of the supernatural. For men living without certainty, the boundary between life and myth was thin. Some believed the sea had moods, capable of love or hatred. You feel that belief pulsing through the deck beneath your feet. A faint, moving light flickers outside a port window. Men notice it. One squints. "Ship," he whispers. Another shakes his head. "Too small." The light drifts closer, then vanishes. Unease spreads. Someone mutters that it must have been a lantern carried by spirits. It was the reflection of the street, Elmo's fire, a natural glow sparked by electricity. Some claimed it was older, a messenger from the depths. Today, scientists explain it as plasma, a phenomenon of physics and ionized air. Yet, surrounded by anxious faces, the scientific explanation feels colder than the legend. One man rises from his hammock, spitting on the floor in a ritual to ward off bad luck. Another scratches the wood with the tip of a knife. The sound is sharp and decisive. They settle back, but none fully relax. Their breaths rise in thin clouds, steady but quick. You glance at the ceiling, where the lantern flickers with every sway of the ship. Shadows ripple across the beams like waves. The pirates watch them too, as if expecting one to twist into a shape of its own. A navigator's old log describes how sailors sometimes heard voices on the stillest nights, whispers carried by the wind. Some said it was lost sailors calling for help. Others believed it was the sea repeating every word ever spoken aboard it. You pause, listening. The wind slips through the cracks, and for a moment, you think you hear faint words in another language. The youngest pirate sits up, clutching a cloth around his shoulders. "Do you hear it?" he whispers. No one responds. The others keep their eyes closed, pretending sleep, a common defense against fear. Your gaze drifts to the cat. Sitting upright, it stares at the spot where the light appeared earlier, its tail flicking once. A shiver passes through the room. The man nearest the door stands and scatters salt across the floor. "For peace," he says. The others nod, grateful for the excuse to act. Modern scholars debate how much sailors truly believed in omens versus using them to manage fear. On land, such tales seem easy to dismiss. But here, in the living darkness, reason bends quickly. The lantern dims, its flame shrinking low. The men lie still. Outside, the wind hums a single note that circles the ship. You close your eyes, letting it wash over you. The fear softens, steady and familiar, almost gentle, wrapping around you like a lullaby of the sea. In the quiet, the ship drifts through black water. Stories fade into silence, yet their shapes linger, curling like smoke above the hammocks. Every sailor holds a superstition close, a charm against the unknown. Tonight, as the sea whispers, you understand why some darkness can only be endured by naming it. The night sky clears, revealing a sight so strange the men forget fear for a moment. On deck you look up. The darkness softens to deep indigo, streaked with ribbons of green and gold, shifting like silk in an unseen wind. The northern lights shimmer above the frozen sea. Pirates stand scattered, faces tilted skyward. Silence falls, even the wind seems to pause. Light reflects on the ice beside the ship, making the vessel glow. For centuries, northern travelers recorded these lights, describing them as spirits, omens, or fire in the heavens. Mariners unaware of magnetism or solar winds gave them names instead: ghost fires, angels dancing, sky serpents. To the seafarers, they were both beautiful and terrifying. You feel why. The lights move with a purposeful grace. A pirate nearby crosses himself, whispering a prayer. Another laughs softly, though his voice trembles. His eyes shine like wet stones. A Hanseatic merchant in the 1400s wrote of sailors falling to their knees at the aurora, describing the heavens burning like oil on water, a divine message or a warning. Under this same cold sky, both reactions feel plausible. The lights stretch across the horizon like rivers of flame. Ice on the rigging glows faintly, sails stiff with frost reflecting pale colors. The ship seems suspended between two worlds, earth and sea below, sky and wonder above. Pirates whisper, afraid to disturb the vision. Maybe it's the souls of the dead, one says. Another suggests, or the treasure of heaven. A third simply watches, breath shallow, eyes wide. Maritime historians note sailors sought meaning in the unexplainable. For those at the mercy of the elements, the sky was guide and God. When it glowed, it felt like revelation. Some recorded faint music beneath the lights, like bells or distant singing. You tilt your head, listening. The wind hums softly, and for a moment, you catch a higher, almost melodic tone. The cat sits beside you, its fur lit green by the glow, tail twitching as if hunting the lights. Men laugh quietly, tension lifting. The cold still bites, but no one notices. A sailor at the wheel whispers that such a sight brings good fortune, no storm will follow. Another claims the opposite, that the lights mark a forbidden edge of the world. Both versions spread, merging until belief itself is uncertain. A scholar once suggested that faith alone protected sailors. The lights could bless or curse, yet reminded men that the universe noticed them, that their small lives floated within something vast. Watching, you understand completely. The lights fade, colors softening into white. Men sigh as if waking from a dream. One spits into the sea for luck. Another lifts his flask, murmuring a drink for the angels. The air feels lighter yet colder. Movements slow, reluctant to leave the magic. The captain steps from his cabin, coat heavy with frost. He gazes at the sky a long moment, then turns to the crew. "Enjoy it," he says quietly. "It will not last." His voice holds neither awe nor fear. Only a weary acceptance remains. He has witnessed too many wonders turn into warnings. Slowly the glow fades from the sails. The sky darkens to its usual black, and the cold returns with full force. The sea stirs once more, small waves nudging the hull. The pirates return quietly to their duties, changed yet silent. You linger on deck, unable to look away from the horizon where the last flickers of light vanish. The air feels sharper now, somehow cleaner, as if the world itself has been washed. The stars return, faint but steady. The ship creaks softly beneath your feet, a sound that feels familiar after so much awe. Below deck, the men will recount this night for years. Some will claim the lights were spirits guiding them through the ice. Others will insist they saw shapes, faces, wings, even cities of fire, within the glow. Each version carries a fragment of truth, for the feeling was real, even if its source remains a mystery. You close your eyes, inhaling the frozen air. The memory of that color lingers, bright behind your eyelids. The sea brushes softly against the hull. The last spark of green fades into the stars, and darkness reclaims the world. Yet, for a fleeting moment, the pirates of this frozen ship have glimpsed heaven touch the earth, and the sea seems almost gentle. The sky has darkened again, and the magic of the lights has faded into the routine of cold labor. The pirates have grown quieter. Their small laughter dissolves into murmurs and sighs. You stand near the main mast, listening to the ship's slow rhythm. Every groan of wood, every drip from the rigging marks time, steady and unending. Sleep has become more precious than gold, taken in fragments whenever possible. One sailor slumps against a barrel, eyes half closed, breathing shallow. Another sits beside him, head nodding, hands gripping a rope as if afraid to release it, even in dreams. Their faces are pale with exhaustion, a fatigue that seeps into the bones and weighs down thought. Logbooks from surviving voyages describe this state not as mere tiredness, but as a deep fog dulling the senses. Names are forgotten, simple knots mismanaged, laughter misplaced. Some whisper to shadows or argue with the wind. The line between waking and sleeping blurs until both feel the same. You move toward the hatch, glancing below. Hammocks sway gently, occupied by bodies that barely move. The air is thick, heavy with tar and sweat, almost sacred in its stillness. Some men dream, others do not, and a few stare blankly, eyes open but unfocused. A Danish merchant voyage notes the sleepless sickness, a condition caused by cold, hunger, and fear. Sailors drift half-conscious, unable to rest yet unable to remain fully awake. Some claimed to see figures moving through the ship at night, quiet and watchful, though unseen by others. Here, such visions could easily take hold in the endless hum of night. Near the door, one man mutters numbers, counting the creaks of the mast. The rhythm steadies him, hands twitching, lips barely moving. A neighbor tells him to stop, but he does not hear. The counting merges with the ship's song. Historians note that sleeplessness was among the harshest punishments at sea. When warmth and food were scarce, sleep was the only true relief, and it was often stolen by waves and wind. Here, each man exists between two worlds, neither fully alive nor fully resting. Lanterns burn low, casting a soft orange glow, shadows stretching long across the beams. A few men toss in their hammocks, faces twitching as dreams flicker. You wonder what they see, perhaps the shore, faces of those left behind, or nothing but the color of the sea pressed against their eyelids. A 15th-century surgeon's journal describes sailors dreaming only in gray after months at sea, the endless water dulling imagination. The monotony seeps here now, eroding color from thought. One man wakes suddenly, gasping, clutching his chest. His breathing is ragged, eyes wide. Others stir but do not help. He mutters about falling, the sea pulling him under, then lies down trembling. Within moments, he sleeps again, or nearly. The others watch briefly before closing their eyes once more. Modern researchers explain these night terrors as exhaustion, malnutrition, and stress, the body dreaming before sleep. Out here, explanations do little. When each creak could call your name, logic offers no comfort. You climb back to deck, seeking air. Frost glints faintly along the railing. A few pirates stand guard, eyes half shut but alert, swaying with the ship's motion, trained to balance even near sleep. They struggle to stay awake, heads nodding then lifting. One hums softly to remain conscious. On long voyages, men could even sleep standing, bodies conditioned by necessity, sometimes punished, sometimes overlooked by captains who knew exhaustion could not be commanded. You watch these men and wonder how they will survive another week of this frozen limbo. The sea moves beneath the hull, its steady rhythm alternately comforting and maddening. The moon hangs low, casting pale light across the deck. It feels less like night, more like an endless dream. You close your eyes, hearing the creaking, breathing, and faint hum of the watchman. The mind unravels here. The ocean offers no silence, only repetition. Rest itself becomes work. Yet, amid this space between waking and sleep, something keeps the men alive. Habit, hope, or the ship itself, carrying them forward through a darkness that never fully ends. Before sunrise, the wind returns, howling across the deck like a furious voice. You awaken to the sound of snapping canvas overhead. The ship tilts sharply as waves crash against its hull. The calm that lasted for days has vanished. The sea is alive again, dark, violent, and unpredictable. You grab the nearest rope to steady yourself, your breath turning white in the cold air. The pirates are already awake. Shouts cut through the storm as men rush to their positions. The cold rain stings like shards of glass. Salt water sprays over the bow, freezing almost instantly on the wood. The air smells of iron and fear. Historical accounts describe winter storms as the ultimate test of seamanship. In fair weather, a ship obeys her crew. In a gale, she asserts her own will. You see it now, the deck pitched steeply, barrels breaking free, ropes snapping like whips. The men struggle to maintain control, their boots slipping on the slick planks. One pirate clings to the rigging, shouting orders that the wind nearly swallows. Another hauls a frozen line, fingers raw and bleeding. The sails strain under the force of the storm, threatening to tear with every gust. Each wave feels alive, pushing back against every effort. A 16th-century log notes sailors describing storms as the sea's tantrums. They believe that water sensed fear. The more the crew panicked, the harder the wind blew. The pirates here seem to share that belief. They grit their teeth, muttering curses and prayers, trying to appear braver than they feel. Lightning flashes in the distance, illuminating clouds in pale silver. For a moment, the horizon disappears as sea and sky merge into a single wall of fury before darkness returns. Thunder rumbles, distant but drawing closer. The captain emerges from his cabin, coat whipping in the wind, pistol still in his belt. His eyes scan the chaos. "Hold fast," he roars. The men obey. Even fear cannot overcome discipline when survival is at stake. He grips the wheel, hands white against the wood. The ship shudders under his command, fighting each wave. You feel the cold more sharply now, rain stinging like needles. The ropes are stiff, sails heavy. One man slips into the mast, groaning as others lift him. No one stops working. There is no time for pain. An old chronicler noted that northern sailors sometimes coated their hands with whale oil before storms to prevent frostbite. The smell was awful, but it helped them hold on a little longer. You can imagine it, greasy hands mixed with salt and blood, clinging to life. The sea rises again, lifting the ship before slamming it down, the impact rattling through your bones. Lanterns flicker, casting light across terrified faces. You hear sharp, wild laughter, the kind that comes from men who have accepted that control is an illusion. One pirate shouts, "She's testing us." Another spits into the storm, "Then let her test." Weak cheers rise, blending with thunder. Defiance becomes warmth when there is nothing else to grasp. Experts today still debate how ships survived winter storms without modern tools. Some credit experience, others luck. Perhaps it was both. The wood bends but does not break. The ropes hold though they creak like bones. The crew moves as one, each motion a silent prayer that the next wave will not be the last. You crawl to the rail, peering into black water. Waves glow faintly where lightning reflects off their edges, a scene both beautiful and terrifying. The ocean seems endless, alive, hungry. A strange calm settles over you, a surrender to how small you truly are. The storm continues. The captain grips the wheel, shouting. The men haul lines, bail water, patch tiers. Hours blur. The world narrows to ship, wind, and the relentless rhythm of survival. Each second feels stretched, heavy with meaning. Then, suddenly the thunder stops. The wind weakens. The sea exhales, still restless but no longer furious. The ship drifts, battered but upright. The men slump, too exhausted to cheer. One leans against the mast, hands shaking. Another wipes his face, whispering thanks to whatever power remains in him. A pale ray of light breaks through the clouds, touching deck, ropes, and bruised faces. The pirates look up, blank expressions too weary for relief. The storm has passed, leaving emptiness behind, like silence after shouting. You breathe deeply. The air feels sharp but less cruel. Around you, the men move again, checking damage, tying knots, scraping ice from the rails. Fear and luck are unspoken. They simply return to their rhythm. The sea has tested them, and tonight, they remain. Morning arrives gray and colorless. The air is still as glass. The storm is over, but its aftermath is quieter, colder, and sharper, stinging the lungs with every breath. You step onto the deck, boots crunching on a frozen salt crust. The surrounding sea has slowed, thickened, dotted with patches of ice drifting like cracked mirrors. Sails hang limp and glazed with frost. Ropes glitter faintly, stiff and unmoving. The pirates tread cautiously, speaking little. The ship seems suspended between motion and stillness, alive but trapped in a frozen world. A 15th century expedition log describes mornings like this as waking inside a frozen breath. The sea no longer feels like water, waves soften into a muffled hum, as if the ocean sleeps. You sense it now, the air thick with silence, even the wind hesitant. One man leans over the rail, staring at icy water. Thin sheets of ice bump against the hull, ringing hollow. He pushes them away with a pole, but more drift from the horizon. Another joins him, muttering that the sea looks like a graveyard. No one laughs. Frost has claimed everything. The deck glows faintly under weak light, each board shining like marble. When you touch the rail, it burns your skin. Pirates pull scarves higher over their faces, beards crusted with frost. Even their breath freezes briefly before fading into the air. A small but telling detail from one explorer's account notes that when the cold reached its peak, ships seemed to fall silent, not just because of the weather, but because the very air absorbed sound. The usual creaks and groans of the vessel softened to whispers. The ship still moved, yet its voice had changed, gentler, subdued. Below deck the air was warmer, but foul. The pirates huddled in layers of wool and canvas. Some slept, some stared into space. Lanterns flickered weakly, their light dim and steady. The heat from the coals barely pushed back the frost creeping along the walls. When a man exhaled, his breath drifted upward like a ghost. Historians often describe this stage of a voyage as the hardest, the calm after the storm. The adrenaline faded, leaving only cold and exhaustion. There were no fires to tend, no winds to battle, only waiting. And waiting at sea is the cruelest work of all. On deck, a few men chipped at ice along the rails. Their movements were slow and methodical. One tapped with a hammer, another scraped with a blade. The sounds carried faintly, echoing through the still air, like working inside a frozen cathedral. Scandinavian sailors once believed that whistling could summon the wind. Crews trapped in ice would whistle softly together, hoping to awaken the sea. One pirate tried it now, a thin, shaky tune. Another joined, then another, until a faint chorus drifted across the deck. The sound was fragile but defiant. The sky brightened slightly, and the faintest hint of sun appeared, a pale circle without warmth. Light reflected off the ice, bathing the ship in a soft white glow. It was beautiful, almost sacred, yet dangerous. The pirates shielded their eyes as the brightness bounced from the frozen sea. For a moment, the world seemed unreal. A sailor dropped his hammer suddenly. The noise echoed like a gunshot. Everyone turned. He stared at red, stiff hands. Frostbite had taken hold, pale patches spreading across his fingers. Another man wrapped them in cloth, rubbing gently. No one spoke. Pain was private here. Experts still debate how crews in medieval winters treated such injuries without medicine. Some accounts describe heated stones pressed to the skin. Others mention wrapping hands in animal fat to keep circulation. The pirates likely knew some of these tricks. Survival left little room for hesitation. The ship groaned as a sheet of ice scraped its side. The sound was deep and slow, like the moan of something ancient. Looking out, the sea had turned white, stretching endlessly. It felt as though the world had stopped breathing. One pirate murmured that they had entered a place where time does not move. Another spat, claiming it was just the sea sleeping. Their words hung, fragile and frost-laden. You hope the second man is right. A medieval poem about northern sailors reads, "The sea lay still as thought, and our hearts froze with it." Standing there, you understand? The stillness is more terrifying than a storm. No motion, no sound, only vast white emptiness that swallows all sense of direction. You close your eyes and listen. The ice crackles faintly, the ship and men's breathing blend into it. The sea, though frozen, still lives beneath, patient and waiting. Even in silence, it is never truly still. The cold only hides the movement until it awakens again. As the day drags on, ice thickens. The ship inches forward, its hull grinding against the frozen surface, a deep, aching sound. You feel each vibration underfoot, a reminder that the ocean is now something harder, heavier, and crueler. The pirates move slowly, steps cautious. Every rope, tool, and finger is stiff. Even speech becomes effortful, words turn to mist before they finish, their breath hanging like pale smoke. Near the bow, two men pry open a chest, their movements sluggish. Inside lie loot wrapped in cloth, silver cups, coins, a tangled gold chain. They stare at it, then close the lid without touching it. In this light, gold looks pale and lifeless. Northern Expedition records note similar moments when wealth lost its meaning. Men who once killed for coins would trade it all for warmth. One sailor wrote, "The ice made fools of us. What use is gold when frozen fingers cannot hold it?" You see the truth in the pirates' eyes. A ledger from a captured ship records pirates hiding loot in barrels of salted meat to prevent freezing. Weeks later, the coins turned black from the salt. Most were thrown overboard. Treasure could not feed or warm them. The pirates gather near the main mast around a small fire in an iron bowl. The flame burns low and blue, fed by scraps of tar and broken wood. They hold hands over it, silent. The light glints off faces and dull trinkets, the flicker resembling reflected gold. One laughs softly, not cheerful. "All the riches in the world," he says, "and we're burning pieces of our own ship." Others chuckle weakly, nodding. The joke tastes bitter in the cold. Historians note that in northern winters, greed did not disappear, it simply changed. Warmth became currency, bread was more valuable than silver. Here, the men guard the fire more fiercely than the gold below deck. The ice scrapes louder against the hull, making everyone flinch. The captain appears, coat lined with frost, expression grim. "She's slowing," she whispers. The crew gazes at the horizon where ice stretches endlessly, jagged like broken glass, smooth like polished stone. The path forward vanishes. A strange practice of 15th century whalers is mentioned in a surviving record. In the diary, men once kept hope alive by tossing a single coin into the ice, making a silent wish for Thor. It was a ritual born of faith, not logic. Now, one of the pirates does something similar. He pulls a small coin from his pocket, kisses it, and tosses it onto the frozen water. It slides across the surface, clinking faintly before vanishing into a crack. No one mocks him. All watch until the sound disappears. The wind shifts, carrying a faint scent of salt and smoke. The fire flickers, and one man shields it with his hands. Another pulls his cloak tighter, murmuring, "The sea takes what it gave." His words carry a weight no one dares speak aloud. Experts still debate whether pirates navigating northern routes ever lost entire ships to ice, as Arctic explorers later did. Evidence is limited, but the legends say yes. Ships discovered years later, trapped in solid ice, decks frozen, crews preserved like statues. Looking around the ship, it feels as though it could happen tonight. The cat pads across the deck and pauses near the fire, curling beside the iron bowl, tail twitching slowly. The men watch, some smiling faintly. Its fur catches the light, glowing like warm ash. In this frozen world, even that small movement feels alive, a sign that something still resists the cold. The sun sinks again, a pale disk swallowed by clouds. Light fades rapidly, leaving a soft glow reflecting from the ice. The ship now looks ghostly, drifting in silver and gray. The air grows quieter, the grinding ice slows to occasional groans. One pirate extends his hand, catching snowflakes. "Looks like ash," he murmurs. Another nods, and the words fade before anyone responds. You glance at your boots, half buried in frost, realizing how restrained your movements have become. Each breath feels heavier, every thought slowed by the cold. Yet beneath, the sea still moves, felt in the gentle sway of the deck, a pulse that refuses to die. The fire flickers again, shrinking. One man tosses in the last scrap of wood. The flame catches for a moment, then steadies. The pirates lean closer, their faces ghostly in the dim light. Around them lies all the wealth they once desired, frozen and useless. What keeps them alive now is not gold, but each other's breath, the rhythm of hearts beating in defiance of the cold. The night stretches endlessly. The wind calms, but the silence is heavy, making every breath seem loud. You move carefully across the deck, boots crunching softly on frost. The world is so still that each sound echoes. Pirates barely move, most lying in hammocks or huddled near the galley, conserving energy. Every action costs effort, every thought drags like an anchor. Morning arrives without color. Sky and sea merge into dull gray, indistinguishable. The surrounding ice loosens, nudged by the current. The ship creaks, sighing as if awakening from deep sleep. One by one, the pirates stir, shadows of themselves. Faces gaunt, lips cracked, eyes dull with exhaustion. Yet a quiet endurance remains, a stubbornness belonging to those who survived everything but comfort. A 15th-century sailor wrote of this. After the harshest winter, when the sun returns, the soul is too weary to notice. "We were alive," he wrote, "but half of us were ghosts." That truth reflects here in the pale gray light. A few men rise slowly, stamping to wake circulation. One pours rum into a tin cup, hands shaking as he passes it around. They drink in silence, warmth spreading briefly, a small defiance against the cold. The ship rocks gently, ice groaning, splitting in slow cracks like distant thunder. The men pause. The sound signals both freedom and danger, for sharp edges could tear the hull. They hold still, waiting. The captain appears, shoulders hunched, face gray under frost. Glancing at the horizon where faint light glimmers through mist, he says quietly, hoarse but steady, "It's moving." A few men glance up, hope flickering weakly. An early explorer once called the first sunrise after weeks of darkness a wound of light in a frozen world. The same sensation stirs now as the pale sun rises above the sea. Its warmth is weak, yet its presence seems enough to awaken the ship. The pirates straighten, facing the light. They huddle together, sharing its little warmth. Some smile faintly, others close their eyes, fearing it might vanish. The glow brushes their cheeks in pale gold, bringing life back after weeks. A sound interrupts, the snap of rope above. A line of ice has formed across the mainsail. As it thaws unevenly, tension pulls too tight. The captain shouts, and two men climb the rigging. Clumsy, yet determined, they work to fix it. The ship awakens, creaking, shifting, alive. One pirate hums a slow, simple song about ports, warmth, and women left behind. Others join quietly, rough but steady. The fragile sound spreads across the ship like a returning heartbeat. Historians debate what kept crews alive through winters that stripped everything: superstition, discipline, luck. Watching these men, it feels simpler. What sustains them is the rhythm they share, the belief that sunrise always returns. The sun climbs higher, warming faces for the first time in days. Ice drifts apart, breaking gracefully, producing deep, echoing sounds, a music of its own. One man laughs softly, another whispers, "She's letting us go." The captain stands by the wheel, coat fluttering, watching the horizon. He does not smile, yet there is a quiet softness in his stance. He pauses, eyes reflecting quiet gratitude, looking at his men and then at the sea, nodding once as if acknowledging a truce. A curious tale from the ports of Bergen speaks of ships that survived impossible winters because the ocean seemed to spare them. Sailors claimed the sea could tire of cruelty, releasing those who had learned humility. True or not, it feels almost believable here. The ice parts slowly, and the ship drifts forward into open water. The men cheer, weak, yet sincere, their voices carried across the frozen expanse by the faint wind. A cat darts across the deck, tail raised, chasing a patch of sunlight. For the first time in weeks, laughter rings out without bitterness. You grip the railing, feeling the ship tremble as it moves. The creak of wood returns, louder and fuller. The sea is still cold and merciless, yet it is moving, and movement is life. Near the bow, the pirates watch the horizon brighten. They appear as survivors of a dream held too long. Their faces are lined with fatigue, yet touched by hope. In the soft light, they are no longer simply men of violence and greed, they are human beings who endured the impossible. The ship pushes through the last fragments of ice, which close quietly behind, leaving no trace of the struggle. Ahead, open water waits, dark but alive, carrying for the first time in weeks the scent of salt instead of death. The ship drifts toward southern winds. The sea, though cold, begins to breathe again. Ice loosens its grip, and small ripples shimmer under the weak sun. The air feels lighter, carrying the sharp tang of salt and freedom. The pirates move slowly but with purpose. Stiffness in their limbs fades, replaced by quiet energy. The sounds of ropes tightening, sails flapping, and boots on deck return, not triumph, but life. One man laughs, a dry, broken sound, another claps him on the back. Their smiles are faint but genuine. A change has come over them, a softness born from enduring frost and fear. Their bravado has faded, leaving an honesty born of survival. A 15th-century Dutch record describes this moment as the Thor of the soul. When warmth returned, so did laughter, and simple things became miracles. A warm breeze, a gentle wave, a distant bird. That awakening is visible here too. The cat stretches on deck, fur catching sunlight, yawns, curls its tail, and chases a rope swaying in the wind. The men pause to watch. One shakes his head, muttering that the beast is braver than all of them. The others chuckle quietly. The sound carries across the water, gentle and human. A Baltic sailor's log notes that after long winters, crews often forgot their own laughter, pausing to hear it anew, fragile yet precious. The pale sun climbs higher, spreading light across the deck, warming the wood until frost melts in thin rivulets. Water drips from ropes and rigging, catching the light like tiny gems. The ship smells of wet wood, tar, and faint galley smoke, life returning in scent and sound. Historians debate how pirate crews behaved after surviving such hardship. Some say they celebrated loudly at the next port. Others suggest they grew quiet, savoring survival. Watching these men, it seems closer to the latter. Their joy is soft, humming beneath movement, in rhythm with the calm sea. The captain stands near the helm, eyes following the horizon. His face is stern, but his gaze careful. After a long pause, he murmurs, "South. Keep her south." The men obey without question. Their trust is silent now, born not of command but shared endurance. The sails fill with light wind. The ship groans but moves smoothly. Water laps against the hull, steady and soothing. You lean against the railing, feeling the wood vibrate like a heartbeat slowly regaining rhythm. A gull appears in the distance, circling once before gliding away. The men notice immediately. One points, saying, "Land soon." The others nod. Whether the bird predicts land or not, belief itself feels like warmth. Below deck, the air smells faintly of smoke and salt. Hammocks hang empty. The men prefer to stay above, seeing the sky and feeling the sun. One hums softly while stirring thin soup. Another sews a torn sleeve, needle trembling but steady. Naval records show that sailors often became restless when warmth returned. The pirates seem the same, eyes darting toward the horizon, alert to the unseen. Afternoon light softens to gold. The water ahead glimmers. Ice has disappeared entirely. The ship moves freely, each gentle tilt erasing memories of stillness. One man begins to whistle an old tavern tune, faltering at first, then growing stronger as others join. The melody spreads like sunlight through clouds. The captain listens but does not interrupt. He leans on the railing, hands clasped behind his back. The tune mingles with gull cries. The men sing, no longer thinking of cold, storms, or past deaths. They think of home, whatever shape that holds in their minds. The sun sinks slowly, the sky blushing faint pink and orange unseen for weeks. The calm sea reflects the colors perfectly. The ship glides forward, sails glowing faintly. The men fall silent, not wanting to disturb the moment. You breathe deeply, the air is soft against your throat. Cold lingers, but it no longer feels cruel. The memory feels sharp yet distant, fading at the edges. The pirates stand together, gazing at the sunset. In their quiet, there is gratitude and perhaps the faintest spark of peace. The sun sinks slowly, and the sky deepens into a calm, dark blue. The horizon glows softly as the first stars appear. Shadows stretch long across the deck, and the cold has softened to a gentle chill that brushes rather than bites. The ship glides steadily on the water, its hull whispering softly with each wave. You move along the deck, observing the men. They are still, not from fatigue, but from reflection. Some lean on the railing, watching the sea. Others sit cross-legged near the mast, heads tilted, to study the stars. Their eyes are clearer now, the wildness of hunger and cold replaced by something gentler. Historical accounts often describe how sailors change after surviving harsh winter seas. Quiet, superstitious, yet strangely tender. Men who once cursed freely begin to hum old songs, carve small pieces of wood, or keep journals they can barely write. Survival seems to teach reverence. A cat rests on a coil of rope, its fur gleaming in the moonlight. It cleans its paws slowly, indifferent to the world. The men take comfort in its calm presence. One scratches its back with a fingertip, smiling faintly. The soft purring fills the still air, a quiet reminder that life goes on, no matter how much the sea has taken. Below deck, lanterns burn brighter tonight. The men have lit more than usual, as if to defy the darkness. Their light flickers on the walls, turning the wood to gold. You walk through the narrow passage past hammocks swinging gently. The lingering smell of smoke and salt now feels warm rather than confining. A few men sit near the galley, sharing cups. The cook hums while stirring a thin stew. Steam rises, catching the lantern glow. It is no feast, but warmth alone feels like wealth. One man lifts his bowl in a quiet toast to those who survived. Others echo him softly. There are no speeches, no boasts, only acknowledgement. Returning to the deck, the sea is calm, so calm it mirrors the stars like polished glass. The air feels clean, untouched. You breathe it in deeply, and for a moment, the world seems to pause. A faint mist gathers on the horizon, glowing under the moon. One pirate whispers, "Fog." Another shakes his head, saying, "Ghost light." They watch, each interpreting it as they wish. The sea is generous with mysteries, and after all they have witnessed, no one feels the need to question them. Experts on seafaring culture often note how myth and memory blend at sea. Stories that begin as survival soften into comfort. That process is visible here. Each man carries his own version of what he has endured, reshaped into something bearable. By the time they reach port, the cold will have become legend. The captain stands near the wheel, posture more relaxed than before. His eyes linger on the horizon. Though unreadable, his expression hints at thoughts of shore, warmth, and faces long unseen. He notices you watching and offers a single nod, gratitude, perhaps, or farewell. Night deepens. One by one, the pirates drift toward rest. Hammocks sway gently, carrying the rhythm of breathing and occasional snores. The ship's timbers creak softly, a lullaby for the weary. You stand by the railing, gazing at the silvered water. The fog thickens, wrapping the ship in mist. The sea murmurs gently, not threatening, but soothing, like a secret whispered in a language almost understood. You close your eyes. The cold brushes your face like a blessing. You remember nights of frost and fear, fires that barely warmed. All of it now feels distant, softened by survival. The pirates below have crossed an invisible threshold. Not just a sea of ice, but the line between endurance and understanding. They have faced the harshest world and found a way to rest within it. The fog curls higher, glowing under the moon. The ship moves slowly, sails catching soft wind. Land lies somewhere ahead, though distance no longer matters. Tonight, the calm is enough. You take a last look at the stars reflected on the water, flickering gently as if waving farewell. The sea's rhythm deepens, eternal. The cold no longer bites, it hums softly, companionable. You breathe, close your eyes, and let the world fade into the sea's sound. The ship glides through the mist, movement nearly imperceptible. Every sound softens, water whispers, rope creaks, cloth rustles. Even your heartbeat slows, blending with the steady rhythm beneath your feet. The air is cool but gentle, faintly smelling of salt and smoke. Nearby, a lantern burns steadily. Below deck, men sleep at last, finding peace after storms, frost, and silence. The ship itself seems to breathe with them, exhaling gently into the night. You let your eyes drift across the horizon. The mist has thickened into a wall of silver, glowing under the moon. Beyond it, the world remains vast and still. A distant shore exists, but there is no urgency to reach it. For now, there is only calm. Resting your hands on the railing, you feel the smooth, cool wood. The ship rocks gently, movement slower than before. Stars shimmer above, mirrored perfectly in the quiet water. Everything comes full circle. You inhale deeply, letting the air settle inside. The cold that once hurt now soothes. The darkness that once threatened now comforts. The ocean hums a steady, endless lullaby. Even in this frozen corner of the world, warmth has always been waiting. Sleep comes easily,